breath, a calm, quiet space before the dawn unleashed the day's concerns and problems. Magnus took a deep breath and savoured the hint of sea salt on the morning air. Then he began to walk to the western rise, a spot where he often watched the sunsets. The darkness of night slowly retreated, and Magnus closed his eyes and sent his mystic senses questing out, trying to isolate and identify the source of his early awakening. He found nothing. Something was sweeping towards them, Magnus knew. The morning brightened behind him as he peered into the retreating night's gloom. Something hovered just beyond his ability fully to perceive it, and it was threatening. He opened his eyes and scanned the distant horizon. Nothing appeared to be out of the ordinary, and nothing echoed the foreboding that had awakened him. It seemed an otherwise normal morning on Sorcerer's Isle. Hearing the scuff of sandals on the trail behind him, a familiar shuffling tread, he knew who approached.
"Good morning, Philip."
Magnus was the only one to call him by his given name. The man everyone else called Pug approached and replied, "Good morning, Magnus. You rose early."
"As did you."
Magnus turned to look at his former apprentice and asked,
"Did you feel it?"
Pug's expression revealed that he understood the question. "Yes."
"Something is coming."
Pug just nodded.
"It's faint and distant," said Magnus, "but it is coming."
There's something familiar about what woke me. It felt chill, then like a dream barely remembered after sleep. Magnus cocked his head, weighing what Pug said. He studied his former student's face and recognized an expression from years before he had met the boy Philip. These subtle reminders of his father contrasted with Philip's appearance. Taller by a few inches, a little thinner, hair a bit darker and less curly. Clean-shaven, where Magnus's father had always worn a beard, but it suited him. Philip's skin tanned less rapidly, and the sound of his voice was different, though the speech patterns were identical. Most vivid, though, were his eyes. The dark eyes were identical to his father's, as was the cocking of his head when deep in thought. Conflicting feelings lingered within Magnus, even after all these years together. With absolute certainty, Magnus knew that the essence of his father lived again within this man. Even so, he hesitated to fully embrace the idea that Philip was his father reborn. He felt that if the gods had chosen to return Pug without the memories of his previous life, they had done that for a good reason. Whatever sacrifice his father had made to end the final attack by the forces of the void at Magician's End, the gods were not done with him. Not by any measure. Of that, Magnus was sure. As their faith avowed, once dead, a soul was judged and returned to the wheel of life, owning the rewards or punishments they had earned during life. But this curious rebirth was alien to every tenet proclaimed by any of the major faiths of Midkemia. Even those who followed Lim's Kragma, the death goddess, rejected the possibility that Pug could have returned with any prior knowledge from his previous existence. One prelate of that order had even suggested that the returning Pug had earned a far higher level of consciousness than that of a mere human. So, Magnus had kept that faith and denied Philip any hint of his previous life. He had wrestled with this dilemma since the day he had first encountered Philip on a beach near Criddy, Pug's original birthplace, and no matter how many times he returned to the question, he found no easy answers. He glanced again at Philip and saw him also contemplating the retreating night. Magnus forced his thoughts away from the imponderable and considered